Is Saturday, August the 23rd, 2025. It's time for our regular That Was the Week technology roundup. Usually Keith's headlines are diabolical, but this one is a really good one. It's the best one I think I've seen, Keith. I'm not sure whether you came up with it or a certain AI comes up with it, but the headline this week is Who Owns the Front Door? If it isn't you, it's game over. And of course, that front door relates to AI and browsers and interfaces and chats and all the stuff that you and I have been talking about for months, if not years. Did you come up with that title, Keith? Be honest here.
I honestly did. I got this idea of the front door in my head, and I went and played with various ways of illustrating it.
It can be the title of your new book.
Who Owns the Front Door?
So explain what you mean by this.
Well, we're in the middle of a transformation to what I would call an AI native internet, as opposed to a page-based internet. The page-based internet includes posts and tweets and Facebook and everything. And it's like there's a URL and there's content at the end of it. An AI native internet is an internet where everything starts with an interaction between a human being and an AI. And the interface for that, currently the leader is OpenAI. ChatGPT is by far the leader. Google this week announced transforming its Chrome browser Google landing page into even more of an AI mode landing page, and it extended it to 180 countries. So Google is morphing its browser into an AI interface, and it's becoming more and more clear that the front door to AI, and by that we mean who owns it in the eyes of the consumer, is the key battleground.
Yeah, and in a weird way, it's back to the digital future. That was the title of my interview of the week on medical. We'll come to that later. But in a way, the box is all important. The most valuable thing is the interface, as you argue in your excellent editorial this week. But AI is supposed to be so revolutionary. Tim O'Reilly writes about that in a piece. O'Reilly is always very smart. Is AI a normal technology? In a sense, who owns that box, that interface, is a very standard tech question, isn't it?
It is a standard tech question. And at least historically, it's been contested for a short period of time, and eventually a winner emerges. So if we go back to the early days of the internet, when Alta Vista was the search engine, Yahoo had the directory service of the internet. Google came along with its PageRank algorithm and blew everything away. And certainly by 2002 at the latest, there was only one player in town, and Google now is a multi-trillion-dollar company because it owned the front door to search, which ultimately became the front door to the internet.
Although, just to be clear, and you and I have talked about this a lot, I love this story of Google. They became the front door because they own the building. I mean, the door itself is ultimately rather superficial. I mean, that original Google search engine was simple and clean, and everyone was blown away with it. But the only reason it was effective was because they downloaded. They had the chutzpah, the two boys at grad students at Stanford. They used the university the university computers to download the entire internet and then create their PageRank browser. So their PageRank engine. So the front door wasn't, it looks like the story, but it isn't.
Well, I think there's a layer of detail there that you're missing. At that time, Microsoft's Internet Explorer browser had a 98% market share worldwide. I was embedded in it at Real Name, so I benefited from that 98% market share. The browser wasn't the front door, actually. Microsoft never really benefited from that.
No, but what about Google? I mean,
Google did. Why? Because everybody hard-coded Google as their default landing page. So basically, you had a situation where Google became the front door, even though it didn't own the browser. We have a barking dog in the background. Let me get rid of it. That was a talking dog saying, "Please let me out of your room."
That was an AI dog, a Microsoft and a Google dog. Yeah, but my
But
point
you get the
simply,
point,
Keith,
though.
is that, I take your point, but the reason I remember back in 98, 99, when Google came along, the reason everyone started using it was because it was a better search engine, not because of the interface.
Yeah, I'm saying the same as you. I'm not saying the interface nailed it. I'm saying it became the front door because it was the very best way to find stuff on the internet. But it did become the front door, and it completely
Very
dominated.
quickly. I mean, especially in Silicon Valley, 1 week everyone was using Alta Vista and Yahoo. The next week they're all using Google.
Yeah, because it was better
and self-evidently better. It was not that you didn't need any reviews. It was just obviously better.
Yeah, and now I think we're in an era pretty similar to the Alta Vista era. Then there was Excite and InfoSeek and others. Now we've got OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Perplexity. I think OpenAI is the clear consumer choice leader at the moment. Google's moves this week clearly show an awareness of that and a fighting spirit to make it not true in the future. But we are at the who's going to own the front door moment. And, it isn't inevitable that the answer will be only one company. It is.
And thinking historically, the real question seems to me, I mean, this really is a multi-trillion-dollar question, is whether OpenAI and Anthropic and Google Gemini and Perplexity and all the others are the equivalents of Yahoo and Alta Vista, and whether in the next 6 months or year or couple of years, something's just going to come along and blow everything else away, like Google did in 98, 99.
Well, the editorial this week focuses on what's missing. And back in those days, what was missing was good search. Well, what's missing today could be reduced down to good AI. And we would then define, what good AI would look like compared to what we have today. And whoever will fill in those missing pieces does have an opportunity, like you said. There's a couple of articles this week that point to the missing pieces. One of them is all about links and commerce, and the other is all about historical documents that are not digitized. But there's a lot of missing pieces in the knowledge base that AI trains on. That means it is not yet a perfect replacement for the current internet. There are times when you still have to go to a search.
Right, and that's the irony, of course, of we're still waiting on the decision on the Google antitrust case about whether they'll be forced to sell Chrome. It would be an appropriate irony is just at the moment when the browser no longer has any value, Google's forced to sell it or asked to sell it, and Perplexity buy it for 50 billion or whatever they want to buy it for, and it has no value. Let's get your editorial this week, Keith, was very good. You break it down. You say chat, not the browser, is becoming the default interface. I mean, that might seem obvious to the Silicon Valley crowd, but I think it's a really important point. For me, as not necessarily the earliest of adopters, but certainly a relatively early adopter, this is becoming increasingly central to how I use the digital world. I'm more and more in AI as opposed to the browser. And sometimes when I'm in AI, I want to use the browser, but I don't really want to go to the browser. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, my desktop's a good example. I've got browser icons on the left, and on the right, I've got icons for Claude, OpenAI, DeepSeek, Perplexity, Qwen, and Grok. And my right hand is almost always hovering over one of those, not over the browser icons to the left, whenever I have an instinctive need to figure something out.
Yeah, and for me, I'm not quite as advanced as you, but increasingly the browser seems archaic. it seems yesterday's technology.
Yeah, although I do think Google's recent changes to its landing page inside Chrome show that it is the innovator's dilemma has forced it to put AI in there, and agentic AI as well as of this week, but it hasn't replaced what was there before. It sits alongside of it at the top. I would predict, and in the editorial I do predict, that Google is going to end up looking a lot more like the OpenAI interface than like the old Chrome interface eventually, which means that the engine of attention and monetization that is web search is going to be buried. It has to.
Right. So let's get to that. You break it down nicely. So you say what the browser gave us, address bar, tabs, history, bookmarks, extensions, now migrates into the assistant. What is the assistant? Is this the box, the AI box?
Yeah, the assistant, obviously the term was first coined by Google. They called their Siri equivalent the Google Assistant. So this concept of an assistant, or what Microsoft calls a co-pilot, what increasingly are being called agents, it's the same.
Microsoft is always their descriptions is always by far the worst. Co-pilots is diabolical. I don't know who runs their marketing department, but they should be fired instantly.
I think that again is the innovator's dilemma. It's really hard to think outside of the constraints of your current environment when you're in one. And so
Microsoft should know better. They've been through this before. And of course, this is you talk about the innovator's dilemma. Clay Christensen is no longer around, brilliant Harvard Business School professor. This could be, this is the perfect test case of the innovator's dilemma, especially for Google.
Exactly, because they're being brave, but they essentially have to replace one business model with another. And in doing that, they can't be the trusted third party that holds the economics, if you will, because they could certainly build a walled garden that's their own, but the other AIs wouldn't benefit from that and will need their version of it.
Right. So, it's as if it's in like one of those silly Hollywood films where the hero not only has to have their lunch and talk on the phone, but also change trains or planes and fly, do all these sorts of miracles all at the same time. In your editorial, Keith, you talk about links not dying, they change jobs, which probably would be, if you're right, would be reassuring in a way for Google, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think maybe the message is a bit too buried there. I think what it means is advertising dies on the internet and is
Keith, you give me the title. Advertising dies.
And is replaced by relevant links in context that can be monetized, but they surface as relevant links, not as ads. That is the AI native internet monetization.
Although last week I can't remember what the thing was, but an English entrepreneur was trying to come up with a new product that would save advertising.
Yeah, that company's had quite a lot of publicity this week, and it's trying to be the search engine optimization for AI, but that implies that you can force links into AI training, and I really don't think you can.
Yeah, particularly given everyone's sensitivity. And then one of your other points is, and I'm quoting you here, the unit of value flips from page views to completions. What does that mean? And how does it know if it's completed?
Well, a completion is contextually, it depends what your goal is. Completion could be reading an article or buying a book or reading a book or buying a product or subscribing to a newsletter. A completion is basically describes the human goal in the first place, and that's still valuable. And so human attention and completions remain, the economic engine of the internet. It's just that they're subsumed inside AI, And now for that to be true, AI has to be competent to do those things, and it currently isn't. By the way, AI can't currently take that role on, but it will.
Yeah, well, one of your other pieces is, and you and I have talked about this one before, about AI might be the future. It's a Wall Street Journal opinion piece, but it knows little of the past. AI still, and I struggle with this, it doesn't always remember as well as we'd like it to in terms of previous conversations.
Right. Well, it doesn't know the recent past, although that's being fixed. ChatGPT recently reminded me that I'm working on a project that the current conversation was relevant to. So it did remember a previous conversation. That's being fixed. But what it doesn't have, for example, is a good history of the French Revolution based on original documents that were never digitized, because all of its learning is on digitized content.
Yeah, but that goes without saying, nor did Google, or nor does Google, traditional Google search. No one has that if it's not on the internet.
You remember when Google got sued because it was scanning books? So Google did try to fix that.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to some of your other points. You've got some nice phrases. The attachment becomes the moat. What do you mean by that, Keith?
Well, a user interface, or a front door, if you will, requires stickiness. It requires a user to want to go back there. And the more sticky it is, the harder it is to switch. So, I use Claude for coding. I've tried other coding environments. I never stick with them because Claude is so much better. I stick with it, and I've got an affinity to it because it served me very well. It's almost like you build an emotional bond.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the old argument on the antitrust front about Google. Google was used to say, well, we're not a monopoly because anyone can just switch browsers. There's lots of other browsers out there. And then the response was, well, people become attached. And that's just the way it is. You can't necessarily blame Google for that. But once you become comfortable, as you have with, say, the Anthropic interface, then that's just how you operate.
Yeah, and you're very loyal to it. And unless something really blows it away, you're not going to change. And I honestly think for most consumers using iPhones or Android phones mostly, ChatGPT has established that position for normal interaction with AI.
Yeah, I have to admit, I've always been, as you know, anyone who watches this show, you're the open AI believer, I'm the skeptic. But I usually use Anthropic, but I decided to use OpenAI ChatGPT for a bit this week, and I found their interface actually quite refreshing. There's something cleaner about it than Anthropic, maybe more Google-like. So moving on, the big issue, of course, as always in this, is business models. And you argue that publishers and merchants aren't doomed, but they are unprepared. So how do they prepare themselves, Keith?
It's a little bit like the early days of Google. At the moment, there's a range of opinions amongst publishers that range from you're stealing my content and I'm going to sue you, all the way through to please use my content and I'll pay you if you surface links. And so we're at a moment of transformation where there isn't a clear single point of view. My prediction is eventually publishers will beg to be included. The AIs will probably agree to pay for training material, but not very much. But and the publishers will probably agree to pay for traffic, roughly the same that they pay now. And that money will start to flow through AI companies instead of through search engines.
So how will the publishers monetize? Through subscriptions?
I would say that won't change. The way they monetize today will survive. So
the way they don't monetize, I mean, the only publishers who seem to be successfully surviving, if you survive your success, are the subscription models like the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal. Advertising doesn't seem to work in it. And given your skepticism on the future of advertising, that's a less and less viable model for publishers.
Well, let's make one assumption, and that is to say that a publisher sees value in traffic. It's up to them how they convert that traffic into money, and there's many ways of doing that. I agree with you that subscription is the current leader, but that is not an AI question. It's a publisher question. What therefore the publisher needs above all else is traffic to do their job on. And as we move from search to AI, there are many fears that traffic goes away. There's all these stats out there now that OpenAI crawled a publisher 13 million times and delivered 675 visitors. In the same time period, Google crawled 16 million times and delivered hundreds of thousands of visitors. And so there is this belief that AI is not a source of traffic. And that's correct, because AI doesn't have links to content, mostly. It doesn't attribute, which is the way it's often talked about. But
yeah, and by definition, that would be a contradiction in terms, because it's supposed to know everything. So if it starts linking out, then it undermines what it's supposed to be.
Well, I don't think so, because AIs have a cutoff date of their knowledge. And so if they want to be current, they're going to have real-time information about sources. Perplexity does a very good job of that, for example, already. It's really figured that out.
But won't that eventually go away, even that time delay?
I don't think
competitive
so.
AIs will have to be up to date.
Well, technically it's very hard, because things are published every second, and your crawler, even Google's crawler, by the way, is delayed time indexing. So you really need to have a solution which is a hybrid of a training set, which has a time limit, and then a real-time part which can supplement that. And Google figured that out. That's also going to be like Google News is real-time. And AI is going to have to figure it out as well. So
let's use our show, Keith, as a model, an example. We for one reason or another, don't monetize this, and we don't want to monetize it. But you and I are currently creating original content that AI can't create, at least at the moment. But this conversation about the future of AI might be valuable. So they somehow incorporate it into their intelligence, what you're talking about, owning the front door.
Yep.
How could it work where it becomes a win-win both for an AI company and for you and I?
There's two ways, and they're already existing technologies, so there's no need to invent anything new here. The technologies are called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, and reinforcement learning. Both reinforcement learning is a little bit like what Google did when it looked at what you click on after the results, and it started to favor the ones that got the most clicks in subsequent results. So basically, you use your learning engine to monitor real-time behaviors, and links is one of those. So let's say I'm looking. Yesterday, I was on Amazon looking for cushion covers for my office.
No, but let's just concentrate on this show.
So that was the week. Let's say we publish That Was the Week later today, which we will, and you'll publish Keen On.
Right.
And if you go to AI and ask where are the best conversations about the need to own the front door.
No, but that's not the right question. The right question would be, will chat replace the browser? So you go to OpenAI.
Yeah. So will chat replace the browser?
So Keith Teare is one of the most articulate thinkers on that. And AIs know nothing except what they acquire from other human intelligence. So how would they incorporate it, and how would we work together?
So almost every AI now has a little icon, which is a web search icon, which you can turn on. If you ask that question with web search turned on, it will find current content. If you give it a hint by giving it, please look at That Was the Week, Keen On, Newcomer, and Cautious Optimism, it will literally go in real time and look at those sites as well.
Right, but the real question is, how do I understand how AI can incorporate your wisdom and spit it back and talk about the front door being essential for the future of the digital economy. Whoever owns the front door wins. How can they both incorporate your intelligence, which is coming from you, Keith Teare, which will benefit the AI, but also you and our Keen On or That Was the Week show?
The same way Google does, by crawling or scraping relevant content. And what's missing is an infrastructural way to do that. They already can do it on a one-off basis. All of the AIs can do that. If you
but you're not answering my question. I mean, maybe I'm not asking it right. You have some original intelligence. We want more traffic. We don't want to just add value to OpenAI. We want people to recognize the intelligence of Keith Teare and Andrew Keen.
I might not understand the question because I think I am answering it. Our links will be surfaced to a user.
So we are back to links then.
Oh, links are not going away. That's what I say in the editorial.
But I mean, if AI if it spits back your intelligence by downloading this conversation, who owns the future? Why would anyone want to go to this conversation?
No, it won't give them the whole conversation. It will give them a link.
Well, then it just becomes another search engine.
No, a search engine is one place links exist, but they also exist, for example, in a bibliography in a book. A link is a universal unit of reference in all contexts. Search is only one of those contexts.
I mean, a lot of it's attribution. I mean, this is the heart of the matter. It might seem a bit dry to some people, but it really is essential. Tim O'Reilly has a couple of pieces that you linked to this week. Is AI a normal technology? And we are only beginning to understand how to use AI. O'Reilly was the man who defined Web 2, or with Doherty, his colleague at O'Reilly Media. He tends to be very smart, very prescient on these things. What does he say?
Well, Tim is basically aware of how early we are as humans in digesting the full implications of AI as the universal canvas on which we interact with information.
And that's another way of saying that he has no idea.
Well, none of us have an idea, but we all know it isn't there yet. Let's just say that. It's good enough to replace Google much of the time, but it isn't there yet. In other words, it's going to get a lot better. So what is it going to get better at? What it knows, how easy it is to surface it, and how productive it makes you in whatever goals you're carrying out, because it can recruit agents to do the tasks required for example, for a piece of research. So Tim is just shining a light on how unprepared everyone is for the full implications of this, which by the way, again, is the same as the web. I mean, I don't know if you remember meeting with Brands. When we opened Siberia Cafe in 1994, Brands used to come through the front door because Saatchi & Saatchi's offices were just around the corner, to try to figure out what this meant for them. And I would say they didn't figure it out for years. It took a long time.
Yeah, the Saatchis, although Edward Saatchi, one of the Saatchi brothers' sons now, is one of the pioneers of movie AI. I think people are beginning to understand it. I would encourage people to look at my interview of the week with Robert Pearl. He used to run Kaiser Permanente. He teaches at Stanford Medical School. He's certainly one of the smartest guys when it comes to the medical industry, which is profoundly dysfunctional, which he recognizes. He's actually rather bullish. He says that doctors will start using AI to interface with their patients. And it's more likely to happen in that way than these big structural changes. What he said, which I thought was pretty interesting, is, and that's why I entitled the conversation Back to the Digital Future, why the future of AI healthcare might be a return to the gig economy. He sees the Uberification of the medical industry, and maybe it's the canary in the coal mine, is that doctors will, in a sense, cannibalize their own work, but at the same time use this technology to bring value to their patients.
I thought it was a very good interview. You know, last week we talked about Torch, the company that, and I installed it, and it pulled together all of my health records and gave me the possibility of sending an output analysis.
Yeah, and I actually, the interview I led with that, that's why you said it was a good interview, I'm sure.
No, it was just a good interview. And it seems very clear that patient capability of both capturing data and analyzing that data to help them interface with their doctor, as he says, so you don't need to visit the doctor once a year anymore because everything is done, including, by the way, blood tests. There's a Function Health now, a company that will do 100 different blood tests from.
Yeah, it's astonishing. I mean, I did my annual medical this week in San Francisco. You'd think, I mean, the medical industry is astonishingly dysfunctional. I mean, it's the only industry that still uses the telephone. I don't think they even know what email is, let alone AI. But this annual physical was, and the doctor's a lovely woman, but it's not her fault. The annual physical was so incredibly archaic and bad. And given what you talk about and what Pearl talks about, I mean, there's a simple fix for that. It's not very radical.
Well, like in all revolutionary eras, those who do win, and so
right. Another good one, Keith. Those who do now.
So it basically is latent. I've called it on this show many times the unborn child. Everything required for most of these advancements now exists.
Right.
So it comes down to who's going to do it. And,
right. And maybe I'm thinking about it wrong. We're waiting for the next Google. We're waiting for the next Larry and Sergey. But the reality of this revolution is that everyone's using AI. I mean, I know what the OpenAI numbers are, but they're astonishing. Yeah. It's generating billions of dollars of revenue because everyone's on it, for better or worse. Lots of critics of this. So maybe rather than waiting for the next Larry and Sergey, the future is already being made by those of us, and most of us seem to be included in that, who are actually using this thing.
Correct. That's exactly right. And however, there's a jigsaw puzzle to put together in almost every field. So the health field was what your interview was about. The jigsaw pieces are already there. They have to be put together into a solution. Yeah. And that will be a massive company. That will probably be the world's biggest health company, whoever does that.
Although Pearl thinks that won't happen because, in particular, in healthcare, there's too much regulation, and it's just not possible. You say the jigsaw piece is already there, and that's a nice way of putting it. But in healthcare and in other industries which are so highly regulated, maybe the financial industries too, regulation will mean that those jigsaw pieces can never be put together.
I'm seeing a lot of willingness in the Trump administration to remove regulations to allow of innovation. So it wouldn't shock me that David Sachs and the tech crowd who have infiltrated the White House effectively on crypto and on AI will expand. They just hired this week a chief design officer at the White House whose job is to re-architect the entire government infrastructure of software. So I'm a bit more.
Yeah, you suggest they infiltrated the White House. Some people might think that people like Sachs have been infiltrated by the White House.
Possibly, yeah. But it's pretty hard to deny that moving the goalposts on regulation to allow innovation is essentially a good thing.
Yeah, and no one's arguing on that. Although, again, coming back to Pearl, who doesn't seem to have any explicit politics here, he was unusually open-minded on RFK's potential at the beginning of the year. He gave him a chance. And in this conversation, he gave him a very clear F. He said he got an F, that he was failing on every front. So RFK Jr.'s attempt to reform, it's easier said than done. We're agreeing too much, Keith, here. We sound like two Silicon Valley boosters, and we'll have to find something to disagree about. What about the AI skeptics? You link with Helen Toner, who became an overnight star a couple of years ago when she was involved in the OpenAI boardroom spat. What does she say about the unresolved debates about the future of AI? Is she focusing on ethics or business?
She's mainly focused on what is AI for, and she kind of resolves it down to three questions to do with AI. Is the current AI paradigm of LLMs, gonna be the solution forever?
And that's an old Gary Marcus trope. In fact, I've got an interview coming up early in the week with Gary. I'm sure we'll get a lot on that. Maybe we'll talk about that next week.
And I think there's a pretty much a consensus that the current paradigm is limited. The real debate is it nonetheless still awesome? Which I say yes to. And Gary,
yeah, I agree on that. I mean, the real question, it seems, on LLMs is whether it's just a cul-de-sac and everyone has to go down one end and then come back out the other and start again, or whether it could conceivably lead to other options.
I think it is a cul-de-sac, but that's not a problem because it's a cul-de-sac with fantastic homes on it that you all want to live in. And
that's the Palo Alto response, although not everyone can live on that cul-de-sac, Keith.
Yeah.
As you know, you live on a lovely cul-de-sac. How many people live there?
I have the house at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, how many people on that cul-de-sac in Palo Alto?
Probably 30.
10?
30.
30, yeah. Very limited. Anyway, go on.
So then her second question is, can AI improve AI? And I think the answer to that is yes. She debates it, but I think the answer is...
So when you say AI, so you mean AI could figure out a way out of the LLM cul-de-sac? Is that what you're saying?
I already play around with this. Like I might get AI, ChatGPT to give me something, and I'll give it to Claude and said, can you improve on this? And it can. So it's when instead of a human improving AI, another AI improves AI. And if you extrapolate that to 100 AIs improving each other, you get some kind of exponential improvement. But it also, by the way, could be exponential, the opposite of improvement.
Is Toner any good? I was, as you know, I was very disappointed with Hinton. He came on my show the week before this, and I just thought he could have been anyone. He wasn't certainly the godfather of AI. He wasn't saying anything in any way original. He might be a smart technologist, but he's not a smart moralist, ethicist. What about Toner? Is she saying anything different, original?
Well, she's capturing the moment better than Gary Marcus because she doesn't...
Well, you don't like Marcus. No one likes Marcus.
Actually, I
don't think even Gary Marcus likes Marcus. I rather like him. I think he's quite amusing.
No, I don't dislike him at all, but I disagree with him. What she does is she asks a lot of the same questions and gives more balanced answers with the goal of improving. She's not trying to knock, she's trying to improve. And the content overlaps a lot. A third point, by the way, is whether AIs will remain as simply tools for humans or evolve into something else. And I think the answer is something else. It's not that
no one knows, but that's a science fiction question. What exactly is Toner doing? She got thrown off the board, right? She was one of the casualties of that failed coup against Altman.
She's a teacher.
What kind of teacher?
In university.
Not an AI teacher.
I think she is, actually.
Well, Toner may have the answer, or maybe she won't. Finally, Keith, or almost finally, penultimately, your startup of the week.
Here we go.
It's an AI company. What is it?
Cursor for Slides. But what she is she's the part of the founding team at the Georgetown Center for Security and Emerging Technology.
That sounds incredibly boring and irrelevant.
So the startup of the week, Cursor is this tool you use for coding. This company has built, it's called Gamma. It's built Cursor for Slides. So yesterday I tested it. There's a link actually at the bottom of the article to the test I did, which is I gave it a document on SignalRank's technology stack and asked it to make a slide deck from it. And it did a really good job of turning what was a narrative document into slides. So I think it's a good example of filling the gaps that AI has a blind spot on in terms of content.
Yeah, I hope one of the things AI kills ultimately is slides. I mean, they talk about an archaic and annoying technology, but we will see. Finally, your post of the week is an interesting one. It speaks something that certainly made me more cheerful, since I'm anything but an expert on anything, is Why Generalists Will Win in the Age of AI by Harry Stebbings. Whenever we get new technologies, we're always told that generalists will win, although I'm not sure whether they ever do. Why does Stebbings think that generalists will win in the age of AI?
And it isn't Stebbings, it's his guest, and I forget what the guest's name.
A generalist, so general that we don't even know his name. Anton Osika.
Right. So what Anton is saying is,
and he's from a company called Lovable.
Yeah, and Lovable is like Cursor, but simpler to use.
So it should have been your startup of the week, Keith.
And it's growing very fast.
So Lovable, why don't you make Lovable your startup of the week? It's a better headline.
Could be, but I made it post of the week, so I got it in there. But what he's saying is that AI is really good at specialisms. Take this week's conversation about links and AI. I'm definitely a generalist. I can imagine the near future of how AI gets better, and I can imagine what needs to be built to make it better. But I would need specialists to actually build it. But those specialists probably wouldn't come up with the idea. And so the generalist is the architect or the air traffic controller for ideas.
Oh, that's another title, air traffic controller, although they don't have a very good public reputation. I don't know if you and I want to be thought of as air traffic controllers, do we?
Well, everyone wants more of them. The only negative is that there aren't enough of them. So,
and of course, if we screw up, then it's a disaster. Then we have planes crashing all over the place.
Correct.
I always wonder whether the term generalist is always, it's a pejorative, well, I wouldn't say it's a pejorative term, but it's a highly subjective term used by people who don't know very much to somehow try to vindicate themselves.
Well, weirdly, thinking abstractly is a rare skill. And I think a generalist excels at abstract thinking and can apply patterns to solutions.
Is O'Reilly an abstract thinker? Is he a generalist?
I think he is, actually, yeah.
And what about Helen Toner?
No, she's more of a commentator.
She's a boring academic. And what about Gary Marcus?
Gary Marcus is just a downer, let's say that.
Gary Marcus is his critics might say he's a failed specialist.
Exactly. He's a sedative. He's not.
And I would define myself as a failed generalist. I don't know about you. What would you describe yourself as?
An aspiring generalist.
Well, from an aspiring generalist to a failed generalist, it's been a pleasure as always, Keith. We will interpret and peruse and download so much more to talk about. Great title for this week. Who owns the front door? Great question that Keith framed. I'm not sure if he did it on his own, but he claims to have. Question about AI, Keith. We will talk, no doubt, about who owns the front door, who will own the front door next week. Have a great week, and we'll talk again next week. Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone.